All right, last session of the day. I'm Dan Pillemer. I'm the CEO of CardWorks. I'm also Australian, which means I love beer. So we're going to wrap this up on time. Mr.
Maybe
Jones.
early.
Maybe early.
I'm Brian Jones. I'm president of Merrick Bank. I work with Dan all the time. Merrick's got 3.5 million customers that we always like to keep happy and provide value and value add to them, regulated by the FDIC in the state of Utah, and happy to be here.
So CardWorks is a credit and payments business. We empower our customers financially by doing the difficult things that others cannot or will not, which basically means we're in a bunch of tricky businesses. We do credit card servicing, which is a royal pain in the ass, and we do that for a bunch of banks. We have, as Brian said, about 3.5 million subprime credit card customers of our own. And we process about $70 billion a year in payment volume through the card networks in some tricky industries, such as CBD and registered high risk and gaming. So these are tricky things. And a lot of these businesses are facilitated through our bank, Merrick Bank.
Yeah, and so we have 150,000 merchants, like Dan said. We work all day long to try to make sure that our customers are happy and our regulators are happy. And I think you guys have heard sort of the backdrop around which banks like us have to operate in.
Brian's number one job is to keep our bank charter safe and not risk our bank charter. And my number one job is to keep our bank charter safe and not risk our bank charter. It is that serious. So Brian and I are not going to teach you anything more about generative AI than you've already learned today. But what we can tell you a little bit about is some tricks or ideas or techniques for trying to get banks to do tricky things or different things or innovative things. So whether you're a bank executive or you're a bank examiner or you're a tech company trying to sell to a bank or you're a fintech trying to convince your bank partner to do something, hopefully you'll have something to take away from this discussion.
Yeah, so we came up with a cool little acronym that sort of describes 4 different mindsets that you ought to keep in mind when you approach your bank to try to get it to adopt new things. And it's called EPIC, because getting banks to adopt new and novel things is often an epic journey. So what's the acronym? What are the mindsets? Education, patience, insights, and conservatism. Okay? So I think that, when I think about getting bankers comfortable, bankers are pretty comfortable talking about risk. We understand what risk is. We understand what it means, basically, at least in our business. What we're not comfortable with is novelty. So E, educate. What you need to do is educate us. Keep in mind that those bankers that are in this conference are the first adopters. There's lots more people in a bank than are at this conference, and they care about a lot of different things. So the first thing you want to do is educate yourself about what the bank you're approaching or talking about, what's their environment, right? How new are they to AI? What does their data environment look like? What does their decision-making metrics look like? And we'll talk about patience in a minute. But so educate yourself about the environment of the bank you're talking to, because they're all different. You've seen a bunch of different banks here: Zions, Merrick, WebBank, First Electronic, all very different banks with very different business models. So educate yourself on what those business models are. Second thing I'd say, educate yourself about the sort of legal environment that they're operating in. We've seen a lot of comments by CFPB. We had the FDIC here. We had a state senator here. We're all, I had to chuckle a little because they said, we're operate within the existing laws. All the existing laws apply to this whole new ballgame of AI, as if that's easy, right? That's, there's lawyers billing billions of hours trying to figure out how to match new facts to existing laws. And if you can help your bank do that, right? How does AI, how does this new use case of AI fit within the existing sort of regulatory framework that this bank is working in, and educate them about that? I heard a lot of comments today about a risk continuum where you could choose low risk or high risk AI applications. Well, talk to your bank about that. Hey, I want the low risk one. And if you have a solution that can solve a painful problem in a low risk way, educate your bank about that. What else, Dan? Anything else?
I guess on educate, put your hand up if you've ever been in a group discussion where you're sitting there and you're not following. You have no idea what people are talking about, and it's too awkward to put up your hand and ask a question. Who's been in that? Come on, surely you've been in it. Okay. If you're trying to convince a bank to change, if there's anybody in that group discussion at the bank that feels that way, you're losing. So you just got to keep that in mind. You have to bring people along every step of the way. You got to be smart about how you educate people without spending hours and hours and hours educating people, because you don't have hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, and a lot of the people here will help you with that, right? If you have someone who you're talking to within the bank who does get it, help them, because they're the ones that are going to be in the private conversations after the meeting gets over, who are going to have to carry your water for you. So educate. Patience and its cousin, persistence. You know, there's a lot of variables here. There's a lot of risks that, the difference between risk and uncertainty is you can quantify a risk. Uncertainty is just something that happens that's bad. And there's a lot of uncertainty. And if you can, so the way banks are structured to reduce that uncertainty and risk is usually committee-based decision making. You know, I heard on one of the panels earlier some suggestions about, form an AI council within your bank that includes business people and compliance people and the legal group and all that. All those people have to kind of get comfortable, and they all have a vote. And you have to kind of check the boxes on each one of those votes, and it takes time. Especially with a novel application, a new vendor, and any of those sorts of novel things that you want a bank to adopt or undertake. Just recognize it's going to take a little bit of time, and there's some politics happening behind the scenes that maybe you don't see. But if you've done the right education process, that'll smooth things over a little bit more. Anything else, Dan, on that one?
Yeah, usually to adopt something really new at a bank, the bank will want to see it spectacularly fail somewhere else. Right? We went to Snowflake relatively early, and everybody was so uneasy the whole time until it kind of blew up at Capital One, when Capital One had that major data breach problem. And when that happened, and our team got to see, all right, well, do we have any sort of exposures that would be similar? And we figured out, actually, no, we were sort of protected every which way. Then everybody at the bank was comfortable. So sometimes it just takes time. There'll be some Gen AI blow-ups here and there, and they're not necessarily bad. They can actually accelerate banks moving. So just be patient.
Yeah, and the second thing I'll say under patience is third-party oversight. It's a big deal for banks. And when we sign up a new vendor or we engage a new licensor, and we saw Cobalt, one of the vendors here, is helping to solve this problem, we have to perform a bunch of due diligence. And so that falls on you, the person who's trying to convince us to do business with you. You'll have to suffer through various levels of pain to get through our third-party oversight and due diligence process. But you want your bank doing that. I'll tell you, it's painful up front, but it'll avoid some pain on the back end if things go wrong.
Totally. All right. I is for insights. Show me insights. Give me insights. There's a lot of stuff I don't care about. I don't care about how many Zeta flops or tokens it took to build your LLM. I don't care about what some high-level ROI is. Like, those things don't really matter to me as a bank president or a CEO or a bank board. What I do care about is WebBank had a difficult problem that you solved for them, and they're super happy, and we really respect them. And we have that difficult problem. That's what I care about. And what I care about in that instance is, how did you solve that difficult problem? That's what we want to hear. We don't need the high-level stuff. We want the insights. And it's tricky getting the insights, because somehow you have to either get some information about the company that you can show the team that you can figure out something they can't, which is obviously difficult. And that involves trying to find a way to get data from the company or proof of concept or otherwise. That's a very effective approach. If you can't do that, then obviously people that are out there seeing, just being at this conference and seeing things in different places, you can educate companies like ours about what other people are doing. That may give us insights as to what we may want to be able to do. So insights are very, very important. The other thing I would say is technology people tend to be EN personality types, if you're sort of a Myers-Briggs person, which means extroverted and innovating, and bank types tend to be IS, which is more introverted and sensing. If you're EN, you are totally attracted to things that are conceptual, high level, blank pieces of paper. Hey, I get that vision. If you're an IS, you generally want to see evidence. Show me where this has worked in the past. Give me the data points. Show me where. So just bear in mind when you're dealing with banks, you're generally going to want to be evidence-based. Show me, don't tell me.
And those insights will be either credibility building or credibility destroying, right? And so it's often a good plan to talk about the guy who failed 2 years ago or whatever, right? So that, you know, your potential customer or examinee or whatever understands that, you know, you've seen some bad stuff and you've found a way to solve that problem too. So I think insights can go both directions.
All right. C, conservatism, or you could say constructive pessimism. So there's a spectrum of mindsets when it comes to change, and it goes from unbridled optimism to open-mindedness to conservatism or constructive pessimism to paranoia.
The legal counsel.
Yeah, no, right. And the reality is that most technology people, whether you're a tech person at a bank or a tech person at fintech or otherwise, tend to be on the unbridled optimism side, as do most salespeople. And most bank compliance people or regulators or examiners tend to be in the paranoia side of the spectrum. And there's obvious reason for that, which is all about incentives. If you're a tech person and you don't make something happen, you probably lose your job. If you make something happen and it works, you make tons of money. And if you make something happen and it doesn't work, you go back and you try again, you know, you try and make it work. On the other side of the equation, if you're a bank examiner and you let something go and it works, probably keep your job. If you let something go and it doesn't work, you lose your job. And if you stop things from happening, you probably keep your job, right? So you can see how this risk aversion and this risk-seeking behavior create a very difficult environment for getting things done. So the challenge is that most technology people think that the right answer is open-mindedness. They think that if they temper their enthusiasm a little bit, okay, I won't be so enthusiastic, and I'll just be like open-minded, then the other side will hear me out and they'll be open-minded as well. And that is the mistake. If you are the person trying to get technology changes or innovation changes done at a bank, you need to embrace the constructive pessimism. It's just going to be more powerful for you. And so here's what that actually feels like in the real world. It's really two things. First of all, after you show me the insights, which I know you'll do, instead of going straight into, okay, so you've seen those insights, here's what that means for economics, or you've seen the insights, here's how we implement the technology. Instead of doing those things, embrace the constructive pessimism and say, we've given you these insights, here are all the things that could go wrong. This could go wrong, and this could go wrong, or this could go wrong. And for these two, here's the answer. Here's why we don't think they're going to go wrong, or here's why we can protect it. This third one, that can go wrong. We haven't figured that out yet. That's actually a totally okay conversation. People at banks aren't completely risk averse. They just want to know what the risks are. They can make their own judgments. So embrace the constructive pessimism. Don't avoid what the bad things are. Embrace them and talk about them. So that's the first point. The second point is that, fortunately or unfortunately, like I said before, unbridled optimism, EN thinkers on the technology side, IS, paranoia thinkers on the bank regulatory side, these people tend to be not very sort of vocal generally. not everybody, but they're great listeners. These people tend to be really great vocally, but not good listeners. I know, because I'm one of these people. I'm a horrible listener. It's one of my biggest challenges coming into a regulated environment. So the most important thing you need to do to convince bank people to do stuff is listen. They don't speak very much, but when they speak, listen, because you guys don't listen. And I know several people in this room don't listen. Here is the trick, because it's very hard to become a good listener. I'm still, after years of trying to be a good listener, I'm not a good listener. But there are some very good tricks to keep in mind if you know you're not a good listener and you're a salesperson or you want to get technology done. Mirror language. It's a very simple trick that is unbelievably effective. So when, you go through a demonstration and you show a bank compliance person, president, whatever, and the president says, yeah, I know, I think our regulators are really going to struggle with the potential for disparate impact. One answer is, yeah, we hear that a lot. Here's what we do to do all the compliance stuff. We do this, blah, 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 blah. That might be a great answer, but as soon as you said, yeah, we hear that a lot, blah, 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 the bank person just went, they're not listening to me. They're not listening to me. They're going off talking about whatever they want to talk about. What you have to do is when the bank person says, I think our regulators are going to have a concern with disparate impact, you say, regulators could have a concern with disparate impact. That's right. Here's how we think about disparate impact. We do this, we do this, we do this. That's it. It's a tiny difference, but in the seat of the bank person, their immediate reaction is, that person is listening to me. He heard my concern about disparate impact, or she, and they're now responding to my concern on disparate impact. Small changes can totally alter how successful those conversations are. So that's conservatism. You want to summarize?
Yeah, so there you go. I mean, it's tough. We've spent the whole day listening to how difficult and how challenging some of the regulatory environment is, how the regulators are still thinking about this and issuing, general guidance, but not bright line guidelines and things like that. So, remember, EPIC, right? Educate, know your customer. Be patient. Remember that we want to be solution oriented and get to the same place you do. It'll just take a little time.
Insights. Show me, don't tell me. And conservatism. Embrace the constructive pessimism and listen. And if you can't listen, mirror the language. So that's it. That's epic. We don't want to hold you up for your from your drinks here. If there's any questions, we'll definitely take some questions. We got like 5 minutes, right? Ish. If you don't want to ask a question because you want a beer, I understand. Awesome. All right, well, let's wrap it up. You guys have a round of applause for Spring Labs for organizing all this stuff. This is awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us, guys.